So imagine you're watching a local 6 o'clock news broadcast um, from like 4 decades ago.
Right, with that degraded tape and the fuzzy edges.
Yeah, exactly. Fuzzy with that classic 1980s static.
Yeah.
And you are watching a weather woman named Colleen. She's mid-sentence, just smiling, delivering this line about the weekend's chance of rain.
Just a totally standard evening broadcast.
Completely normal. Until suddenly, off camera, a stage light explodes. And, I mean, we are not talking about a little pop here.
No, it's a massive structural bang.
Right. Real shattered glass raining down, real smoke billowing up into the hot studio lights.
Which is, it's the specific kind of loud, sudden event that basically bypasses conscious thought entirely.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, basic biology dictates this immediate involuntary startle response. Like, the human body goes into survival mode before the brain even registers what actually happened.
Which makes what happens on this tape so incredibly unnerving. Because Colleen does not blink.
Not even a flinch.
She doesn't flinch. She doesn't even turn her head toward the explosion. She simply smiles right through the sound of the glass shattering, delivers her line perfectly, and throws the broadcast back to the anchor desk exactly on cue.
Defying literally every instinct programmed into the human nervous system.
Yes. And so, welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring this incredibly detailed, deeply unsettling stack of source materials today. It's a speculative fiction and analog horror archive known as The Architecture of the Smile.
It's such a fascinating collection.
It really is. The documents, the videos, the fictional research logs in this collection, they all investigate this surreal phenomenon. They actually ask a very specific question, which is, what happens when the mask of perfection you wear in public stops being a psychological performance and manifests into an actual physical trap?
Right, because the overarching theme of this entire archive is a dissection of the public-facing self. We all curate how we present ourselves to the world, especially when we are struggling. But the fictional case studies in these sources, they push that concept to its absolute limit. They're exploring the terrifying, suffocating comfort of a world where you basically never, ever have to fall apart.
So let's start with the origin point in the lore, which is that 1980s tape of Colleen. I found the fictional research logs detailing the aftermath of that broadcast so fascinating.
Oh, the audio isolation part?
Yes,
Yeah.
because the control room team, they were watching live, and they just assumed she somehow hadn't heard the explosion. But when the fictional researchers in the story went back and isolated the audio from Colleen's lapel microphone, they found the biological panic.
They did, yeah. Underneath that unbroken smile, the mic actually picked up the faint sound of her breath catching.
Wow.
And she held that breath and then released it perfectly on schedule with her next line. So the body registered the terror, right?
Yeah.
But her public-facing persona had developed such an iron grip that it completely suppressed the outward expression of it.
That is just, it's chilling. And then the archive outlines her disappearance, which establishes the literal physics of this story's universe. So she finishes the broadcast, smiles, says goodnight, and she walks away from the anchor desk.
Right.
She steps through a studio door. And the terrifying detail the creators of this archive include is that this specific door only appears in the video footage from that single night.
It's not on the blueprints at all.
Exactly. It isn't on any building blueprints before or after the event. Colleen walks into a hallway that physically should not exist.
She basically vanishes into a spatial anomaly.
But the part of the narrative that really hooked me is the immediate aftermath.
Yeah.
Because nobody at the station went looking for her for 3 days.
3 whole days.
And the mechanism for why they didn't look is brilliant. It's because her image kept running. The broadcast somehow aired unrecorded weather segments right on schedule. Her public accounts posted cheerful updates.
Yeah, the source material uses this to introduce the concept of the ghost in the machine. The idea that a polished, professional facade can attain enough momentum to basically just run itself on autopilot, even when the human being inside is entirely absent.
Which I really struggled to wrap my head around within the fiction, honestly. Like, think about tripping on a sidewalk. The universal human reaction is to pop up and instantly smile to show everyone you're fine.
Oh, absolutely. The defensive smile.
Right. But how does the lore justify a momentary reflex, that defensive smile, sustaining itself as an independent entity for 3 whole days without a person actually being there?
Well, that is the exact problem a fictional group within the text, the Halcyon Institute, is established to solve.
Okay, yes, the Institute.
The archive contains decades of their clinical reports. They analyze that Colleen tape endlessly, looking for the specific scene where the human slipped away and the performance took over.
And what mechanism did they finally propose? Because reading through those dry clinical reports in the source stack, it seems they concluded her smile didn't just, stay on her face.
No, they hypothesized a structural shift. The Institute determined that the smile had basically ceased to be a facial expression altogether and had expanded into an architectural dimension.
That is so
It
wild.
became the room she walked into, and they termed this phenomenon and the space it creates halcyon.
Which is a very deliberate word choice by the authors, I think, because we usually use halcyon to mean idyllic or peaceful, like halcyon days.
Right, but the meteorological root of the word describes something fair-seeming, calm on the surface.
Wow.
It denotes a weather condition that is only still, not necessarily safe. So the Halcyon Institute defines this space not as a geographic location, but as psychological denial manifesting as physical geometry.
Yeah.
A realm built entirely out of calm, polite surfaces.
And because the narrative establishes halcyon as a dimension built from faked perfect realities, it makes complete sense how the story bridges the gap to its modern-day protagonist.
It really does.
If this anomaly preys on people who manufacture calm surfaces, it naturally targets someone whose actual literal profession is building fake perfect realities.
Right. Which brings us to Ren.
Yes, Ren.
We're introduced to Ren, who is a home stager.
And the sources drop us right into Ren's life on a Sunday afternoon. She's letting herself into a property on Averil Street to finish prepping an open house. And the details the authors use to describe her work are just incredibly grounded.
Oh, they're so specific.
She brings in these neutral linens. She arranges a bowl of decorative lemons that nobody will ever eat. She folds a throw blanket into a crisp triangle on the edge of the sofa.
Exactly the same way every time. She constructs environments deliberately devoid of messy human reality.
Right.
Because buyers don't want real life. They want an empty, idealized fantasy they can project themselves into, and Ren is a total master at providing that blank canvas.
And I see a very deliberate parallel here. The text contrasts her physical staging of these properties with the psychological staging of her own life.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Ren has essentially been living inside a staged version of her own mind for the better part of a year.
Yeah, the timeline provided in the documents maps out this steady accumulation of suppressed trauma. Like 6 months prior, her partner Priya left her.
Then 4 months prior, she stopped telling her sister the truth about her chronic insomnia. When the text notes this really heartbreaking reason for it. It says vocalizing how tired she was just made her empty apartment feel smaller.
That is just crushing. And then finally, 2 months prior, she began giving her therapist, Dana, perfectly composed, highly articulate paragraphs about, quote, growth and boundaries.
Yeah, that part tripped me up initially, because going to therapy is usually the opposite of suppressing trauma, right?
Right, you'd think so.
But the way the archive frames it, Ren wasn't exactly lying to her therapist. She was performing her recovery.
Exactly. She was taking real psychological concepts and arranging them like the furniture in her open houses.
Oh, that's such a good way to put it.
It looked immaculate, it photographed beautifully, but it was arranged in a way that ensured she never actually had to sit down and feel the weight of it. She was basically giving her therapist an open house tour of her mind.
And because her internal world was completely governed by this staged reality, her psyche was perfectly calibrated to interact with the halcyon phenomenon.
She was uniquely primed for it.
She was uniquely vulnerable to this spatial anomaly, which manifests when she is walking the upstairs hallway of that Averil Street house.
Right, so the official property listing in the archive explicitly states the upper floor has 5 rooms.
5 rooms.
But Ren, walking the hall with the tape measure, counts 6 doors.
The architecture of the space had fundamentally altered. The lore suggests that the sheer density of her emotional denial essentially generated a new door to accommodate it.
It just pops into existence.
And it sits at the end of the hall, painted in the exact same inoffensive soft white she uses for all her listings.
And underneath that door, she hears sounds designed to trigger her specific vulnerability.
Right, the party sounds.
Yeah, the clinking of ice and glasses, a warm hostess laughing, saying, oh, stop it. Just the ambient noise of a party going wonderfully.
And I think if we look at this empathetically, put ourselves in her shoes, rather than just viewing it as a horror trope, her motivation for opening that door is incredibly tragic.
It really is.
She doesn't walk into this unknown, impossible room out of scientific curiosity. She opens it because she is profoundly exhausted. A deeply lonely, understaffed part of her brain, a part that honestly hasn't been invited anywhere warm in a year, just desperately wants things to be wonderful.
So she turns the knob.
She opens the door.
And the narrative echoes the Colleen incident perfectly here. Because the true horror isn't the disappearance itself. The horror is the fact that the outside world looks at Wren's absence and perceives a person who is absolutely thriving.
The cover-up mechanism is so chilling. Because nobody at Wren's staging company hears from her after Thursday, but no alarms are raised whatsoever.
No, her digital footprint simply takes over the performance.
It's the modern iteration of the ghost in the machine.
Exactly.
Her accounts just keep posting gorgeous new listing photos. She uploads a caption expressing, gratitude for a season of change. She even replies to a client's text message saying she is doing better than I've been in years.
The automated performance perfectly replicates her tone.
Which is terrifying.
The authors really use this to make a sharp point about digital communication. The mask is so flawless that it only becomes suspicious to someone who is specifically trained to look for perfection as a symptom.
Right, which brings us to her sister. Wren's sister panics 9 days later, and it's precisely because Wren hasn't gone quiet.
Yeah, the constant, flawlessly positive updating is what triggers the alarm. It's the anomaly. So the sister calls Dana, the therapist.
And Dana is really the only character equipped to navigate this.
She is. Having spent 2 months listening to Wren's immaculate therapy speak paragraphs, Dana had learned to listen for the seams instead of the sentences.
I love that phrase, listening for the seams.
It's great. When the sister describes the relentless, hollow positivity of the texts, Dana recognizes the architecture of Wren's denial immediately.
So the rescue mission begins. Dana gets the Averil Street address. She uses the lockbox code she finds in the binder on the kitchen counter, and she steps inside. And the way the archive describes Dana finding the 6th door is fascinating.
Oh, how she purposely ignores the impossible geometry.
Yes. It notes that she purposefully didn't let herself think about how it was there. She just finds it on her first try and walks through.
She crosses the threshold into Halcyon.
And the text description of the interior space is incredibly surreal. Dana enters a world locked in a permanent, shadowless noon.
Just bright, flat light everywhere.
Exactly. The hallway unfolds into this endless sequence of identical, gorgeously staged living rooms. Everything is immaculate. The crisp triangle throw blankets that nobody has ever used are on every couch.
And in every single room, there is a perfect, polite party taking place.
Right. And the physics of this fictional realm seem entirely dedicated to maintaining that aesthetic of just being fine.
Yeah, Dana begins navigating the rooms, asking the guests for Wren, and the responses she gets really illustrate how the environment functions as a defense mechanism.
She asks 12 different people. The first 11 offer these polite deflections. They smile, remark on what a lovely evening it is, and completely ignore the intrusion of reality.
But the interaction with the 12th guest, that's where it gets really interesting. It reveals how the space actively enforces its own rules.
Right, because Dana asks the question, and for a fraction of a second, the 12th guest almost breaks character.
Yeah, Dana can see a whole unslept year flickering behind this woman's eyes.
Like the facade is just about to crack.
Exactly. But then, the machinery of the room visibly kicks in. The guest catches herself, smooths over her expression, apologizes for spilling a drink that does not actually exist, and just drifts away.
The space actively corrects any deviation from the performance.
Which presents a massive structural problem for Dana. Like, how do you mount a rescue mission for someone who is existing in an environment designed to make them look completely fine?
Right. How do you save someone who doesn't look like they need saving? When Dana finally locates Wren deep into the impossible geometry of the house, maybe like the 70th room, Wren looks incredible.
She looks radiant.
She's dressed for a closing day. She is projecting that specific brand of fatigue that just looks like triumph from across a room.
And Wren immediately offers Dana food and a drink. She engages in this bright, articulate conversation, and the archive points out a devastating detail here.
Oh, about the sentences.
Yes. It notes that every sentence Wren speaks is real, but not a single one of them is true.
I found this shift in Dana's perspective right here to be the most compelling part of the archive. This is where this story completely subverts the Halcyon Institute's 40 years of research.
It really flips it on its head.
Because the Institute viewed the anomaly as a predatory trap that caught victims like Colleen. But Dana looks at Wren and realizes the Institute had the dynamic completely backwards.
Wren isn't being held hostage by a monster at all.
Yeah.
She is being fiercely, extremely well cared for by the one part of herself that had never let her down in public, her own public-facing persona.
That part of her psyche had built this massive fortress to shield her from the pain of her breakup and her exhaustion.
So the space is a trap, yes, but it is an incredibly comfortable one.
Right. And attempting to forcibly drag someone out of a perfectly calibrated defense mechanism would backfire.
Oh, inevitably. If we look at the psychological metaphor, direct confrontation usually just reinforces the denial.
So Dana realizes she can't demand that Ren leave. Instead, she utilizes a completely different tactic to dismantle the physical space.
The unrehearsed question.
Yes. She waits for a lull in Ren's bright, chattering sentences. And then, without an audience around to perform for, Dana asks the one question that has absolutely no place in that environment.
She asks the question she had been trying to ask for 2 months in an office next to an untouched box of tissues.
She looks at Ren and asks quietly, "How are you, really? Not performed. Not composed, really."
Such a powerful moment.
It is. Because Dana doesn't throw a lifeline. She throws a wrench into the machinery of perfection. She delivers a cue that cannot be answered with a script.
And the physical reaction to this question completely mirrors the tape of Colleen from the 1980s, but with one crucial difference.
Right. So Ren laughs on reflex, and the laugh catches behind her teeth, just like Colleen's breath did.
But this time, there is no anchor desk to throw the broadcast back to.
Exactly. Dana refuses to play the part of the polite audience. She offers no cue. She just waits.
And deprived of an audience, the physical staging of the smile simply loses its structural integrity. Her face basically has nowhere left to hold to.
The tray in Ren's hands ticks over. And for the very first time in this endless dimension, the perfect, shadowless noon light flickers.
The break actually happens.
Ren lets out this low, cracked, entirely real sound and covers her face. The emotional anchor drops, and the spatial dimension begins to fail.
And the authors include a deeply cynical but really fascinating detail about the nature of the halcyon space at this exact moment.
About the other guests.
Yeah. As Ren physically collapses, nobody at the party looks over.
The guests 3 feet away just keep mingling and laughing.
It's a cruel mercy. The environment demonstrates its true nature. The party was never actually about Ren's well-being. The performance of perfection only required her surface image. It didn't need her actual humanity to keep running.
Which makes Dana's reaction to this collapse so brilliant, because she doesn't try to manage the situation.
No, she doesn't.
She doesn't offer tissue or try to calm Ren down. She simply stands there and allows Ren to be a messy, broken woman falling apart in a room that was architecturally designed to prevent that exact scenario.
And by doing that, by allowing the reality of the pain to exist without staging it, Dana breaks the lock on the room.
When Ren finally lowers her hands, she is an absolute wreck. Her eyes and her mascara are completely destroyed, and they simply turn and walk out.
Just like that.
And the archive emphasizes that they leave through the exact same ordinary door Ren had originally opened.
The exit had never been hidden. It had never been locked. The illusion of the perfect room was just infinitely more compelling than the messy reality of the hallway outside. It was just easier to keep facing inward.
The visual contrast the authors leave us with at the end is incredibly striking. Think about Ren stepping back into the Averil Street hallway.
Right.
She is unfixed. She has mascara running down her jaw. There is no gratitude post-grafting in her mind. She isn't thinking about how to frame this collapse as a story of personal growth.
No, she just looks exactly like what she is, a woman who has been through hell.
Exactly.
And the ultimate lesson of this entire speculative archive, and honestly something you should probably ask yourself next time you're having a tough day, is a radical reframing of what constitutes a trap.
How so?
Well, we are conditioned to view failure or emotional collapse as the worst-case scenario, right? The trap we want to avoid.
Sure, absolutely.
But the architecture of the smile posits that sometimes the ultimate trap is presenting a flawless success. When you construct an environment purely out of your own invulnerability, you eventually become a prisoner to its maintenance.
Oh, because it takes an immense amount of energy to keep those lights on and those throw blankets folded into perfect, crisp triangles.
Exactly. True freedom, according to the mechanics of this story, isn't about maintaining the perfect room.
Right.
It isn't about having all the right answers or the most articulate therapy speak. Freedom is the right to walk out of that room completely unfixed, crying and critically, with no one there to photograph it.
No audience required. Just, the messy reality of being a person.
Perfectly said.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of the smile. We've explored the lore of the Colleen tape, Analyze the metaphorical weight of Wren's staging and unpack the structural power of the unrehearsed question.
It really serves as a fascinating lens through which to examine the foundations of the public spaces we build for ourselves.
It really does. So I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over or explore on your own. Next time you are having a genuinely terrible day, but you find yourself pulling out your phone, smiling, and typing, doing great, thanks, in a message.
Oh, we've all been there.
We have. But ask yourself, who is actually sending that message? And what kind of room are you building around yourself, brick by polite brick?